Hello and welcome back to CarMiZa. This is Trunk Details Part 14. Today is November 6th, 2023. I've taken a couple of weeks off of working on the car. It's time to get back into it. And during that time, I worked on one of my other cars, the Mercedes, and put some content on the channel and got some pretty good feedback there. Also kind of organized the shop, still have a lot to do. One of the things I did not mention in the status update, the 1,000 hour update video, was a person who was very, very instrumental in my inspiration and certainly in this build. And that person is Henry Renega. Henry was the installer, and he's in New Jersey, who originally built the car for Earl and did the woofers and the fenders, the motorized pods up in the dash. The guy is an absolute genius and a true craftsman. So I wanted to recognize Henry in this video. So one of the other things I did since I worked on the car last was I posted some content and some images and links to videos and things like that on various Facebook pages, car audio pages, and I got a lot of really, really positive feedback, some incredibly kind words and words of inspiration. So thank you very much. And shout out to all of you who really, that's the fuel in my tank to keep me going. So in this video, I'm going to cover one quick thing with a startup of the car, and then we're going to get into working on the trunk panels, kind of trimming off the trunk. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so during the, I'll call it a short break I took here, one of the things I wanted to do was to start the car. I haven't started the car. I didn't realize it. It's been about a year and a half, and I know you're not supposed to let cars sit that long due to potentially rusting the internals of the engine, things like that. I did put in, I've got stabilizer in the car, and I just put in a bottle of sea foam, and I do live in Arizona where there's like zero humidity. We're in the desert, so I don't foresee any issue. So got the battery hooked up. This will be the first start in about a year and a half. Let's see how she goes. Fired right up. All right, now I'll monitor everything and make sure temperatures are good and document the date and just check everything out. Make sure everything is good and let it run for a while. It's purring like a kitten. And don't mind those lights. I've got a parking brake light on because I got the e-brake set, and I have the SRS light on because there are no airbags in the car, clearly. So that'll be reset once I reinstall the dash. Yeah, the car is, look at that, a nice smooth idle, and I still have a ton of mechanical stuff to do to the car. Mechanically, it's basically as it was when I bought it. So I'm gonna redo new fuel injectors, flush out the fuel lines, all kinds of stuff. So, but it's very impressive to see how well the car runs just sitting here. It is smooth as glass. One thing to note back here, you may hear that it sounds kind of loud. There's a really big exhaust leak. Part of the exhaust, it's strange, just the exhaust, not the underside at all, had rusted out. So there's kind of a rust spot, which is why, it kind of sounds a bit louder than it normally would. My goal, obviously, is to make the car as quiet as possible for the system. Right now I've got the engine cover off because I took the throttle pedal out because the carpet's out and that attaches to the carpet. So if I wanted to be able to hit the throttle, I could do it here. But again, listening to the car, considering it hasn't been running in a year and a half, and I've got to do some maintenance. I did replace the spark plugs. Those look pretty dirty when I first got the car a few years ago. So I'm gonna let it run, get up the temperature, and again, just monitor, make sure I've got no leaks, things like that. Okay, the startup test was a success, no leaks. Motor sounds really good and quiet, smooth. Don't mind the exhaust leak again, but that was one of the things that I wanted to cross off my list. And again, I'll document today's date and then probably every 6 months go ahead and start the car. All right, so let's go on to the next part. Okay, with the startup test done and successful, the next thing to do is to work on the trunk panels. So to do this, the first thing I need to do is take everything out of the trunk And I'm going to start with that back wall where I call it a ski hole is. That'll be the first piece, and I'm also going to do some tweaks to not tweaks, but basically some additional cutting on what I'm calling the main plate, the main piece up against the rear deck. So let me go ahead and get everything pulled out, and we'll go from there. Here's a view that I don't think I showed in the last trunk details video with just the Sony stuff in before I put the Milbert floor in, but I've got the Milbert floor out, get everything packed away. Now I'll pull down this stuff. All right, so to work on the template, I've got the Milbert floor. Again, this is just the mock-up piece that I've been using. Got that back in because the ski hole wall is going to go up to the main plate and then down to the top of the Milbert floor. And I've also put the rear seat in so I can start figuring out how I'm going to frame that out. So let's get going on building a template. The ski hole wall template is built. Don't mind the corners up there, the top corners. When I put a little bit of pressure on the piece, those fall into place. I did have to cut the ends right here. I had to taper that slightly on both ends because in there is a slight curve to the aluminum. But it came out good. I know that the seam is not down the center. That is not relevant for what I'm doing here. And this is, I've shown this in some other videos. This is like a foam that I buy at the dollar store, and large sheets are like $1.25. So it's good stuff and works really well for doing this kind of thing. It's kind of like a hard cardboard. So, all right, the next thing I need to do is figure out the location and shape of the hole where the pass-through ski hole section is going to be done. I need to consider carpet here, and I even need to consider, in terms of this bottom edge, if I'm going to roll the carpet around the bottom of this piece or if I'm going to cut the carpet flush with the bottom. So I'd take a straight edge and cut it here. That'll make a difference in the overall size of this because of the thickness of the carpet. So I'll consider that, figure that out. If I'm going to cut it flush with the edge, it's good to go. If I'm going to roll it, I need to take the width of the carpet off of the panel. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. All right, here's what I got so far. I'm gonna go with a rectangular opening, even though you'll see on the front side it's not perfectly rectangular. I think it'll actually kind of finish it off. I like the template in terms of the way everything is centered. It's good. And again, this little weird gap, once I push it forward, that actually fits perfect. Notice too, I did an overhang by a little more than an inch. And then this way, when I put these side panels up, those will go right up against this. And so now I've got kind of this edge, and this edge that are finished off. And then I'll build my side panels to kind of finish the entire thing off. So let's take a look at it from the front, show you what it looks like. All right, and see if I can do that there. You can see I've captured that opening, and you see down there, that's what I was talking about earlier. I'll finish that off. Again, this aluminum piece, once it goes in, it's permanent. It gets kind of upholstered into the car. There's no serviceability element to it. So I may end up, filling this area in and having a smooth transition. I'm also going to, let me pop the seat in and see how everything looks, and I'll show you how that looks. One other thing too, I rounded my edges, my corners, and I think that'll make it a bit easier to carpet. I really want to try to get away without any seams. That's kind of my goal. And I've got to check that carpet to see how easy it's going to be to form. Not very easy at all, but if I can get around that corner, that'd be cool. All right, let me pop the seat in. All right, I'm good with that. You can see I'm right on that edge. And if I go in here, you can see right along the top. Again, I'll fill this gap in. Not quite sure yet with what, not a big deal. I'll also do a little bit of fill-in down here. But I'm thinking in terms of the carpet, I could take the carpet from the back side of this, roll it over into the car, and then cut it right here, and then put another piece that rolls over here, and my seam is back behind this corner. You'll never see that, our little secret. but it's going to keep everything really nice and clean and allow me to not have a seam that you might see when you look past the millbrits. So I am good with that. I think this piece is 100% and ready to transfer to aluminum. So let's go to the next step, which I'm going to figure out. I think I'm going to start those side panels, which are going to be the hardest part of this whole thing. So let's get on it. Here's one other quick view with the seat in from the back to give you an idea. So everything lines up nice there. All right, after giving a little more consideration, there's a bit more I need to do before I go into the side panel. So this, once again, is the ski wall. I've got that all prepped. What I am doing here, once again, is transferring this to 1/8" aluminum, and there is a metal fabrication shop locally where I just give them the dimensions and they cut it to size, and then I'll cut the hole. And if you recall, I rounded the tops just slightly, about 1/8 inch up there. So today is Friday. I ordered that metal today, and then I will stop first thing in the morning, pick up the metal, and then I can transfer this. The other thing I need to do is work on the main plate, which I have pulled out. If you recall, the main plate I just left at the stock width, which was 48 inches wide. With the main plate in, I don't have it in right now. It comes to a little bit past this bar. It's just about almost flush with the edge of the bar. So what I need to do is notch that out, the actual main plate, to allow it to fit the trunk bars. So what I'm going to do, I still have the cardboard template I used to make the main plate, so I'll go ahead and get that kind of placed in there, cut the holes. So I'm going to cut 2 holes in the cardboard, put that back in the car, fit it, make sure everything is good, and I've got good clearance, again, using that as a template, and then I can transfer that to the aluminum. So let me go ahead and do that. Okay, so this template is all set for the trunk bars. What I ended up having to do, which is no problem or a big deal, and I'll show you why in a minute, is I was trimming away so much that I just ended up cutting this off. And this gives me, right now, maybe 3/8 to 1/2 inch on either side. So on either side of the trunk bar, and then on the front and back of the trunk bar when the trunk is both open and closed. I say it doesn't really matter that I cut this away, because one of the other things I'm going to do is extend a couple of side pieces on here. First thing I need to do is to transfer this to the main plate, which I have sitting right there, and then cut the aluminum to get this out. Then I'll put it in the car, double check it, make sure it fits good, and then I'll extend the sides, and then that'll be it for the main plate. One other cool thing I'll show you here too, I needed to make sure that when the trunk was closed, everything was good. I have the tail lights out, and really tough to focus, but if you look in there, I've got a perfect view, perfect window to be able to see the clearance, see how everything is, even opening and closing the trunk. So pretty cool there. So now again, at this point, I'll go ahead and transfer this to the aluminum, get the aluminum cut. I'm just going to use a jigsaw for that. That's what I use to cut the all the edges of that main plate. So I'll go ahead and get that cut, get it back in the car, and test fit, make sure everything's 100%. All ready to cut the aluminum. And if you have not seen me do this before, it's 1/8" aluminum, which is pretty thick, and I'm cutting it with a jigsaw, so I'm using a specific Diablo blade. I also spray it with a little bit of WD-40, and again, I'm just going to cut this by hand. So I'll go ahead and get both sides cut, and then we can test fit it in the car. All right, first cut here was a success. Everything went well. I did use a file just to clean up the perimeter, just a little tiny bit. If you are cutting this kind of material, here's a couple of other pointers. Besides the WD-40 and the correct blade, 2 other things to suggest. Go at a really, really slow speed. I've got this set on 2 out of 6. And if you're going to make a curve, so as you can see the scrap piece there, I obviously came in and made a curve to get to this straight edge. Go really slow when you're going around a corner, because it does not like that much at all. So if I do need to open this up at all, I will probably use a jig and then use a flush trim bit on the router.
I doubt I will have to, but if I do, that's what I'll do. Because if I try to open it up with the jigsaw, you know, if I got to open this an eighth, it's going to be a mess. So, all right, let me do the other side. We'll get it in the car.
All right, both sides are cut, and this reminds me of a good buddy of mine, Joe, has recently pointed out, man, it would be cool if you would show more of you actually doing the work. I just made myself a note to order a tripod so I can set my phone up, hit record, and then you guys can actually see me doing some of this stuff. So I will definitely do that, and thanks for the suggestion, Joe. I appreciate it. All right, let's get this thing in the car and see how it fits. All right, this is the passenger side before. Okay, that went well. There is the gap that I have. I've got a pretty large gap there because that is going to be carpeted, and I think I'm going to roll the edges in. Also, those scratches that you see in the trunk bars were there from the previous install. I did not do those. And you can see the other side as well. So here's the first, having the main plate in with the trunk lid and the trunk shocks and all that in place, which is pretty cool. One step closer. All right, so for my next thing I need to do, I stared at this whole design. We'll talk about this in just a little bit. These side panels, these are by far the most comprehensive, complex part of the trimming out the trunk. In order to do those, what I'm going to do is take again, what I call the main plate and extend it as if you were to just draw a line and go right to the edge of the car. I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to see what's in the way and all that stuff. Likely cut that metal out from here down, and then that's going to, you'll see how it'll kind of all fit together once I trim out the rest. And then when I do that, there'll be a plate that goes in here, and then that'll cap off that opening for the trunk bar. So when it's all done and carpeted, it'll look, it's kind of the way Earl did it last time too, or it is the way he did it. They did almost the exact same thing, and we got to the same result. They used MDF in there. I am anti-MDF to the death, so I'll use aluminum. So what I need to do now is pull the trunk lid back out, which sucks by myself. Doing it one person, it's kind of big, heavy, awkward, difficult. I'll pull that out, and then I'll probably pull the main plate. I only have a few screws holding that in, and I'll see about cutting that extra metal. So let me go ahead and do that. And the passenger side after. So once again, I needed to remove more metal. The car is 100% structurally sound still. This thing is built like a tank, so keep in mind there are 13-inch holes in the front fender, so I'm not too worried about taking more metal out. The rear deck is still very, very solid. But this is going to allow me to do the rear main plate and extend it, and then you're going to see where I'm going to fiberglass these eventually, the shock towers, to make my side panels, and then I can also do my side panels here. I also removed, there was a bracket for the jack. That's where the jack used to be stored. I'm going to relocate the jack. I don't want you to see that in this beautiful trunk. So I took the bracket off here, and then the other piece that was here. So now again, I've got, everything's very clear. So now I need to do the same and cut out that chunk on the passenger side. Sorry, the driver's side. It's getting late.
In case you're wondering too, I'm using just a cheap Harbor Freight. I think I forget their brand or whatever, a couple different brands I have, but just a cheap air saw, especially with the car dynamatted now and, you know, all that. This makes the least amount of mess and doesn't throw any sparks. I don't have to worry about that, and allows me to get into tight places. So, all right, let me go ahead and get this driver's side cleaned up and cut.
Okay, both sides cut. Notice how much room I have now and symmetrical, especially around the shock tower area. I realize that the fender well humps are asymmetrical, but that'll change when we build the side panels. So that was quite a bit of work. It was probably total a couple of hours to cut all of the metal. Even on this side, I cut a little tiny bit more over in this area. I cleaned everything up, epoxy painted, and then the bare metal, and then dynamatted over the areas that I cut. So see that side? There is the driver's side. And now you can see I've got plenty of room to work with. So now what I'll do is put the main plate back in. Definitely enough for the last time, but I can put it in, get it in place, and then start working on the extension pieces. I'm calling them the fill-in pieces for the main plate. So let me go ahead and get the main plate in, and I'll probably, actually at this point I won't put the trunk lid back in. I'll just focus on these side pieces. All right, so this is what I was talking about earlier. What I'm gonna do now is extend the aluminum with a piece of fill-in that fits in that whole area and maintains this flat all the way across. And I'll do that. There's the passenger side and on the driver's side as well. So once again, of course, I'm not just gonna start with a piece of aluminum. I'll build templates. So let me go ahead and do that out of that 1/8" cardboard stuff I've got. Okay, so now you can see my madness kind of coming to fruition here. So these are the templates for those side fill-in pieces. If you notice right now, they're at kind of an angle. They slope down a little bit, and it's pretty late. It's like, I don't know, almost 11 o'clock. So I'm gonna call it a night and sleep on this and think about whether or not I like that. I could just trim these down, make them smaller, and then have them go straight across. But it looks pretty cool. I don't hate it. So I'll think about it and make a decision. If I decide I want to trim them down, I'll just, cut a 1/4 of an inch or so off. That'll make them straight across. And from there, I'll transfer those once again to aluminum. And the cool thing is, in terms of mounting them, right now I just have them taped. So I'll build little, just 1/8" flat bar aluminum, and I'll just kind of couple little straps just to hold it in place, nut and bolt it, and that'll be good. And again, these pieces, this whole main plate is, I'll call it semi-permanent. Meaning once I am done and I put it in for the last time, it's going to be upholstered in the car. All this will be, the carpet will come right up to here, go up to the trunk gasket. So it's really not going to be a service item. It's not going to come out. So, all right, so let me call it a night and then come back in the morning and determine what I want to do with this, or later tomorrow. Tomorrow's Saturday. I got some stuff to do around the house, but I'll certainly be back in here in the garage tomorrow night. All right, it's now Sunday. I had a longer to-do list around the house than I thought. Here's what I ended up with these little trim pieces. I made them a little bit bigger, as you can see, and then put more of an angle on them. And here's why. I noticed this piece of metal here in the car, this beam here, and then there's this extension piece here. This way, it's relatively consistent there. And I'm thinking, and again, I'm still working on the side panel design, but I kind of like the way that this flows, and I might extend this piece of metal with a piece of aluminum in here and then just run this all the way to the back of the trunk. And then my side panels all come up to that line right there. So again, a lot of this, when I do this stuff, I've got a general idea, but it's, every piece is contingent on the other, and you kind of make it up as you go. So I think I'm good with these. I will now transfer these to aluminum, to 1/8" aluminum, and build the brackets to be able to get these mounted to the main plate. So let me go ahead and work on that. All right, I want to show something real quick while I'm doing these fill-in pieces. So once again, I got my templates. I've got a piece of aluminum here. This is the piece I didn't use for the one Zapco bottom. If you guys have been following along, I had a piece cut and it was off, maybe, I don't know, less than a 1/16. I didn't like the fit, so I went and got a new piece cut. This is the old piece. So I'll use this. It's a perfect size to be able to make those templates. I just want to give you an idea of kind of the level of detail I try to go through, despite having, not an incredibly expensive shop and all the best tools. So I laid it out. This is the second piece I'm about to cut. So this is the second one. I've already cut the other one. I'll show you here in a sec. This is just going to be the off cut. This is the piece that I cut. Here is my cut piece. You can see that piece is pretty straight. So already you know it's going to be pretty decent.
This edge and this edge are the edges that I cut. These two edges are the factory edge, and this is a little chunk that I had to notch out just to fit into the trunk. Don't worry about the scratch. This is all going to get roughed up before I upholster, just to help the glue adhere. My point is this: after I cut this with the jigsaw, obviously it's not going to be perfectly straight. I probably could run this through the table saw, but I'm super sketched out doing that with the 1/8 inch. So I did it with a jigsaw, and then I used a file. No shame in that. But I just want to show, when I put this piece against a straight edge, yes, it is a Harbor Freight square, if you're wondering, but I'm sure it's square enough for what I'm doing here. You can see there's no rocking back and forth. Let me just get it lined up. You can see, hard to do with one hand, but I did have to, run a file just to get anything that was slightly off. And I squared it up, and you can see it's nice and square. So this just kind of exemplifies, I think, what I'm after. I don't go on to the next part until the piece I'm working on is as good as I can get it. And this piece, again, is going to get stuffed up into the trunk, way up in the corner. Nobody will ever see it. It's going to be carpeted, with a thick carpet that this just gets buried. I could be off by 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch, and once it's carpeted, nobody cares. Nobody's going to see it, but I care. That's the kind of level of detail that I take. That's the pride, that I take in my work. So just wanted to show that. All right, metal plates are built. Now I'm going to build a couple of brackets per side and get them mounted to the main plate. I do have a good quality file. This is a Nicholson, which, as I understand, it's not the best out there, but it is a really good file. So certain things I won't go cheap on.
Even the ends of these brackets are nice and square.
Okay, all 4 brackets are cut. I've also put a slight angle, the angle that matches the angle that these fill-in plates will be in. So now I'm going to pull the main plate, get everything laid out for drilling the holes for the hardware. Okay, got the brackets all drilled out. Once again, use my new favorite deburring tool to clean up all the holes. So now I'll get these clamped onto the main plate, drill out that, and then clamp it to the fill-in pieces, and then drill those out and get it all mounted together. Okay, 4 holes drilled and countersunk on the main plate. This is the underside, if you will. So I've got that one done too. Now I'll get the brackets mounted onto the main plate, and then I can start working on the fill-in pieces. Okay, brackets mounted, of course, obviously stainless steel hardware, nylon inserts. I don't have washers on here. My fender washers are a little bit too big. I'm gonna get some different washers, so I will do that. And then I've clamped this piece on. You can see the angle here. And now I've got this drilled. I'll pull it apart, deburr, countersink, put this together, and then that side will be good. That's kind of my dry run outside of the car. So I'll do both sides and get it 100%.
Ta-da! Came out really nice. All right, so this is what it looks like out of the car. You can see the hardware, very, very solid too. I mean, the thing is, that's the whole idea with these crazy overbuilt brackets. But everything came out really nice. No gap in here. Again, everything's really straight. I do have this this happened because of basically the way that this fits in the car, and where I had to trim out here for the holes and pull it in this way. There's room here. There's something in the way right here. I don't think it's going to be an issue. If it is, I'll figure something out once, kind of pre-upholstery final check. But I think it looks good. Something really sexy about stainless steel hardware and aluminum. I think it just looks really sharp. So, all right, so now I need to pull this apart because it won't fit in the car in one piece, which is fine. Again, not serviceable. And I'll put the main plate in the car. I'll leave these arms on, and I'll just pull the fill-in pieces off, put it in the car, put the fill-in pieces back in, remount those, make sure everything is good. Put the trunk lid back on, which is a lot of fun, and make sure everything lines up. And then from there, it'll be on to the next part. So let me get to work on that. One other quick thing with regard to building this. So building these side pieces, cutting, the aluminum, following it down, getting everything square, building the brackets, drilling this, countersinking, get everything lined up on both sides total was 5 hours of work. So a lot of work. It could have done, you know, something in sheetrock, screwed it into the car or whatever. But again, I'm going for this level of care and attention to detail and craftsmanship. So a lot of times I've had a lot of people message me and like, hey, how do you stay motivated on something like this? I'm over 1,000 hours and I'm still, I don't have any one part of the car finished where I can look at it and say, wow, that's perfect. I got subs, you know, in there, which is cool. The way that I do it is I just kind of eat the elephant one bite at a time and figure and kind of break things down. So again, it's right now it's the trunk. So I'm trimming out the trunk and I'll get that done. Then I'll go on in the next part. So it's just tackling one thing at a time as good as I can. So, all right, let me get going on getting this piece apart and back in the car. The trim panels are a success. Turned out very, very good. I'm very happy with the way everything came out. Get a little light in here. And you can see, so I wanted to get the trunk bars and everything in there to make sure everything is good with the mechanism. There's no issues, and that is the case. And if you notice, what I'm kind of going after here is this gives me a nice piece right here. That's where this piece is going to come up to, and that's going to define that edge. Look also, all the work in there. I think that came out very good. Very happy with that. Here's the other side. And notice again, like, sorry for the movement there, up here in the corner where I had to partition this out. And then again, what I'm thinking is the carpet is gonna, potentially, I'm making this up as I go to some degree. So I think, but I'm following this factory edge right here. And I like the angle. When I first put the cardboard in, the templates, I was trying to go with it flat across, but I kept on having to cut so much of the cardboard away. This edge, I wanted this edge a little bit lower because I want these side panels to come up and have a nice edge there. And I didn't want to go too far up with those. So I really like it. I like the, if you look there, you can get a better idea. I like the angle, and I think it's really solid. So, and it's super solid. I mean, it's, if you've been watching along, you know me by now and know I use probably twice the hardware I need to, but whatever it takes to get it done. This piece, it's not going to go anywhere. And the main plate is held in with 3 screws instead of the 34 that hold it normally. So, all right, so this part is done. Now let's talk about the next part. One other thing I want to show, especially those who are really paying attention to the build and interested in what I'm doing. Sometimes it sounds like I don't have a plan or whatever. I spend, for every hour I'm in the car, it's probably 2 to 3 hours at least of just planning. And I use Google Sheets and I come up with, you can see this is all notes and just ideas and thoughts about, I'm going to call that the pull floor. That's going to be the removable floor. The car floor is the areas in the spare tire well, the stuff that stays in the car. The rear wall, which is where the kind of against the near wall, like where the taillights are. So there is a huge amount of thought, planning, consideration that goes in. I use this also to figure out materials I need to get. There's been a lot of that, obviously, aluminum and hardware and coming up on fiberglass and all that when I go to do these fiberglass side panels. So just thought I'd show you guys this. Again, if you're really following along with the build, there's a lot. I track all my hours. There's a lot of thought and careful planning that goes into this kind of a build. Okay, to that point, I am going to wrap up this video. I just realized it's been quite a while since I've put out a CarMiZa Trunk Details video. I know I've got the other content I put up on the channel, but this is really what I'm doing. I'm going to give you guys a sneak peek, kind of a teaser for the next video. This is the piece for again, I'm calling it the ski wall. So if you recall in this video, we built the template. It's still not 100% on some of the aspects of this. I might follow the body line of the car. I might square off these corners. There's going to be some things I'm going to do. I think this will be the next thing I do. and or I'm gonna start, and I cheated on you guys. I did some things without showing you. I have started to play around with what I'm calling the bottom plate for the side panels to try to get an idea what I'm going to do there. Those will be made out of 3/4 inch plywood, because the side panels are going to be basically, you'll see this again likely in the next video, if not the one after that. They're going to be made of like a skeleton out of plywood, all with machine screws, and I've got that all kind of planned out, and then I'm going to wrap it in fleece, like sweatshirt material, and then fiberglass it, and those are going to be the side panels. So, and again, that's one of the most time-consuming parts of this whole trunk build out. One thing I didn't mention also, with the trunk, trimming out the trunk, my thought, I'm trying to estimate my hours. I am thinking I'm going to be at about 100 hours doing just the trimming out of the trunk. So far, after today, I'm about 25 hours. So it might even be over 100. So, all right. So with that, once again, there's the car just sitting there. Thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you have not yet, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you very much. Talk to you soon.